At 11:34 p.m. on April 9th, three small Iranian naval vessels, each no larger than a commercial fishing boat, deployed underwater mines across a 17-kilometer corridor in the southern approach to the Strait of Hormuz. The operation lasted 42 minutes from first deployment to final withdrawal. When it was over, the United States Navy's ability to operate its carrier strike group in the Persian Gulf had been effectively neutralized without a single missile being fired. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, accompanied by two Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and a nuclear attack submarine, now sits anchored approximately 90 kilometers south of the strait, unable to transit north without risking catastrophic hull damage from weapon systems that entered service during the Carter administration. Subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications, because what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz represents a fundamental shift in naval power projection that defense analysts have been warning about for 2 decades. The pace at which operational reality is diverging from official Pentagon briefings means you cannot afford to be behind this analysis when the next maritime incident forces a revision of the entire regional security architecture. This is not temporary disruption. This is demonstration that the world's most expensive naval force can be rendered operationally impotent by adversaries spending less on their entire maritime strategy than the United States spends maintaining a single carrier for one deployment cycle. To understand the full strategic weight of what happened on April 9th, it is necessary first to understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually represents to global energy markets and why Iran's decision to mine 17 kilometers of one specific approach corridor carries consequences extending far beyond immediate military tactics. The strait is not simply a shipping lane. It is the singular choke point through which 21 million barrels of crude oil pass every single day, representing approximately 30% of all seaborne traded petroleum globally. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait and Iran itself all depend on this waterway to reach international markets. There is no alternative route that can handle equivalent volume. The proposed overland pipelines through Saudi Arabia carry less than 5 million barrels daily and cannot be expanded quickly enough to replace strait closure. For Asian economies dependent on Middle Eastern energy imports, the Strait of Hormuz is not one option among several. It is the only option that exists at scale. That geographic reality is the strategic context without which the mining operation cannot be properly understood. Iran did not attack one shipping route among many alternatives. It demonstrated capability to close the only route that matters, and it did so using weapons technology that costs approximately $47,000 per unit to produce, while forcing the United States to deploy defensive assets costing $860 million per vessel to counter the threat. The mathematics of this asymmetry is the story that official briefings have systematically avoided addressing. The technical specifications of what Iran deployed reveal why American mine countermeasure capabilities are proving inadequate despite decades of development investment and multiple billions spent on detection systems. According to multiple independent naval intelligence assessments, the mines placed on April 9th are MDM-3 models, a Soviet-designed influence mine that entered service in 1971 and has been manufactured under license in Iran since 1989. Each mine weighs approximately 1,000 kilograms, sits on the seabed at depths ranging from 40 to 90 meters, and activates through magnetic signature detection rather than physical contact. The weapon does not require the target vessel to strike it directly. It detonates when sensors detect the specific magnetic field signature produced by large steel-hulled warships passing within lethal radius, which extends to approximately 300 meters in optimal conditions. The Eisenhower carrier strike group cannot simply sail through the mined corridor hoping the weapons will not activate. The magnetic signature of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier is among the most distinctive profiles in modern naval operations. The ship displaces over 100,000 tons, contains thousands of tons of steel in its hull structure, and generates electromagnetic fields from its nuclear reactors and electrical systems that are detectable by passive sensors at significant range. Any MDM-3 mine with functional sensors positioned along the Eisenhower's intended transit route would register the carrier's approach long before the ship reached minimum safe distance. Now to the question that Pentagon officials are examining with considerable urgency. Why cannot the Navy's mine countermeasure vessels simply locate and neutralize these weapons before the carrier group transits? The answer exposes a vulnerability that has been documented in classified assessments since at least 2008, but never adequately resolved, despite congressional appropriations exceeding $4 billion for mine warfare programs over the past 15 years. The United States Navy currently operates 8 Avenger-class mine countermeasure ships and 4 littoral combat ships equipped with mine hunting systems. These vessels use a combination of sonar imaging, remotely operated vehicles, and in some cases trained dolphins to locate bottom mines in shallow coastal waters. The problem is operational tempo and geographic scale. Clearing 17 kilometers of seabed to the degree of certainty required for safe carrier transit requires systematic sonar mapping of every square meter, visual confirmation of any detected anomalies, and either neutralization or controlled detonation of confirmed mines. Under optimal conditions with cooperative weather and no adversary interference, this process advances at approximately 1 to 2 kilometers per day when performed to naval safety standards. 17 kilometers of corridor clearance therefore requires 8 to 17 days of continuous operations, assuming perfect conditions and no additional mine deployment during the clearance operation itself. Iran has demonstrated it can deploy mines faster than the United States can clear them. The 42-minute operation on April 9th placed an estimated 12 to 16 mines across the target corridor. Iranian naval forces operating from bases less than 40 kilometers from the strait can repeat this deployment cycle nightly if they choose, adding weapons faster than American countermeasure vessels can process the existing field. The mathematics creates an impossible operational equation where defensive effort required exceeds offensive effort expended by a ratio that guarantees attacker advantage. If this channel is providing the analysis this situation deserves, the kind that explains actual operational mechanics rather than repeating official characterizations, subscribe now and share this video with anyone trying to understand why the world's most expensive military is currently immobilized by weapons that cost less than a luxury automobile to manufacture. When the insurance markets price in what is actually happening in the Strait of Hormuz, when the energy futures reflect the real probability of sustained disruption, when the next carrier group faces the same operational paralysis, the analysis will be here. The economic consequences of the carrier group's immobilization have now reached a scale that extends far beyond military embarrassment and into the daily economic reality of consumers in countries with no direct stake in Middle Eastern conflicts. And understanding the specific mechanisms by which this naval standoff is generating those consequences is essential to understanding why they will not resolve quickly, even if Iran withdrew every mine tomorrow morning. Global energy insurance markets responded to the April 9th mining operation by increasing war risk premiums for tankers transiting the Strait of Hormuz from 0.12% of cargo value to 0.85%. That increase appears minor in percentage terms, but translates to catastrophic cost multiplication across the entire energy supply chain. A very large crude carrier transiting the strait typically carries 2 million barrels of oil. At current crude prices averaging $92 per barrel, that cargo is worth $184 million. The insurance premium increase from 0.12% to 0.85% raises the per-voyage insurance cost from $220,000 to $1,560,000, an increase of $1,340,000 per transit. Approximately 17 tankers pass through the strait daily carrying Middle Eastern crude to Asian and European markets. That means the aggregate daily increase in insurance costs alone now exceeds $22 million. Over a 30-day period, insurance cost increases total $670 million. None of that additional cost disappears from the supply chain. It transfers directly to refined fuel prices at the pump and electricity generation costs that consumers pay through utility bills. The actuarial mathematics of war risk insurance creates a feedback loop that amplifies economic damage beyond the direct cost increases. Insurance underwriters price premiums based on assessed probability of loss multiplied by potential claim value. Every day the Eisenhower remains immobilized south of the strait, the assessed probability of loss increases because the visible deterrent effect of American naval presence has been demonstrably neutralized. If the carrier group that exists specifically to ensure freedom of navigation cannot itself navigate safely, the insurance calculation must reflect that the protective umbrella has failed. Premium increases therefore compound over time rather than remaining static at the April 10th levels. By April 20th, war risk premiums had climbed to 1.2% of cargo value, and multiple underwriters had begun requiring additional security riders that tanker operators describe as pricing equivalent to 1.8% when all clauses are calculated together. Gasoline prices in the United States reached $4.67 per gallon average by April 14th, an increase of 49 cents per gallon from the March baseline before the mining operation. That increase did not result from actual supply disruption. Not a single tanker has been struck or delayed. The price spike reflects entirely the insurance and risk premium costs that refineries and distributors pass through to retail stations. For an American household consuming 50 gallons of gasoline monthly, the increase represents an additional $24.50 in monthly fuel costs. Multiply that across 140 million households, and the monthly aggregate increase exceeds $3 billion extracted from consumer spending that would otherwise flow to other sectors of the economy. European natural gas prices responded with even greater volatility because European energy security depends heavily on liquefied natural gas shipments from Qatar that must transit the Strait of Hormuz to reach LNG terminals in Spain, France, and the Netherlands. LNG spot prices at the Title Transfer Facility hub in the Netherlands increased from €28 per megawatt hour on April 8th to €46 per megawatt hour by April 15th. That 71% increase in the wholesale gas price translates directly to electricity generation costs in countries where natural gas provides baseload power. German wholesale electricity prices increased 38% in the same period. For a typical German household consuming 350 kilowatt hours monthly, the electricity bill increase averages €42 per month or €504 annually if prices remain at current levels. These are not temporary disruptions that resolve when diplomatic negotiations produce de-escalation agreements. The insurance market has received empirical demonstration that existing American naval capabilities cannot guarantee safe passage through the strait when faced with adversaries willing to deploy mines. That assessment will not reverse simply because mines are removed from one corridor. The knowledge that mines can be deployed successfully and that the American response proved inadequate has permanently altered the risk calculation that determines insurance pricing. Even if every mine were cleared tomorrow and Iran provided diplomatic assurances of no future mining operations, war risk premiums would not return to March baseline levels because the operational vulnerability has been exposed and documented. The broader strategic question that emerges from assembling all of these technical and economic elements is the one that defense analysts across the ideological spectrum are beginning to examine with increasing urgency. Can the United States Navy maintain credible power projection in contested littoral environments when adversaries can deploy asymmetric capabilities that cost less than 1% of American defensive responses while achieving strategic paralysis of the most expensive military assets ever constructed? The Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group represents approximately $14 billion in combined vessel construction costs and carries an operational deployment expense exceeding $25 million per week. Iran immobilized this entire force structure using weapons that cost less than $1 million in total to manufacture and deploy. This is not theoretical vulnerability discovered through wargaming exercises. This is documented operational reality occurring in real time, with global economic consequences already manifesting in consumer prices across 3 continents. The Pentagon's official response has emphasized that the carrier group remains fully operational and capable of executing its mission. But the mission is power projection and freedom of navigation enforcement. A carrier that cannot navigate through the waters it exists to keep open has failed its mission regardless of how many aircraft sit ready on its flight deck or how many missiles its escorts carry in their vertical launch systems. The historical parallel that multiple naval strategists have referenced is the vulnerability of British dreadnought battleships to German U-boats during World War I. Britain possessed the world's most powerful surface fleet, but German submarines costing a fraction of battleship construction budgets forced the Grand Fleet to abandon large portions of the North Sea and operate from bases the submarines could not easily reach. The expensive assets that represented national prestige and industrial capability became liabilities that required protection rather than instruments that projected power. The technology that rendered them vulnerable was not sophisticated. It was simply effective and asymmetrically cheap relative to the defensive response required. Iran has executed the modern equivalent of this strategic dynamic using weapons technology that is literally 50 years old. The MDM-3 mines sitting on the floor of the Strait of Hormuz were designed when Richard Nixon was president and manufactured in facilities using Soviet technical specifications from the Brezhnev era. American mine countermeasure systems have known about this weapon for decades. Development programs specifically intended to counter bottom-influence mines have received continuous funding since the 1990s. And yet, when confronted with actual deployment in operationally realistic conditions, the response capability proved inadequate to maintain naval freedom of movement. The question defense committees will eventually be forced to examine is what precisely the $4 billion spent on mine warfare programs over the past 15 years actually produced in terms of operational capability. The littoral combat ship program was sold to Congress specifically as a solution to the mine warfare challenge in shallow coastal waters. 4 vessels equipped with mine countermeasure mission packages have been delivered at a cost exceeding $2 billion. These ships are currently operating in the region, and yet the Eisenhower remains immobilized because the mine clearance timeline exceeds acceptable operational risk thresholds. Either the capabilities do not work as advertised or the operational requirements exceed what the systems were designed to handle. Neither explanation reflects well on the acquisition process that consumed billions in funding while producing inadequate results when actual requirement emerged. What Iran has accomplished extends beyond tactical embarrassment. It has demonstrated to every regional adversary with access to coastal waters that American carrier strike groups can be operationally neutralized using weapons technology available on international arms markets for modest cost. The strategic implications ripple through every contested maritime region where the United States depends on carrier presence to maintain deterrence. The Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, the approaches to the Korean Peninsula all present similar operational environments where bottom mines could restrict carrier maneuverability and force American naval assets into positions where they cannot effectively execute power projection missions. China has been observing the Strait of Hormuz situation with considerable interest. Chinese naval strategists have published assessments of American mine countermeasure capabilities for years, and the current operational paralysis provides empirical validation of weaknesses that were previously theoretical. The People's Liberation Army Navy operates the world's largest inventory of naval mines, with estimates ranging from 50,000 to 80,000 weapons in various configurations, including bottom-influence designs similar to what Iran deployed. If conflict over Taiwan were to escalate to military confrontation, Chinese mine deployment in the strait approaches and around Taiwanese ports would create exactly the operational dynamic currently immobilizing the Eisenhower, but at vastly larger scale across hundreds of kilometers of shallow coastal waters. Here is where the complete operational picture stands on day 6 of this maritime standoff. The USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group remains anchored 90 kilometers south of the Strait of Hormuz, unable to transit north without unacceptable risk of catastrophic mine strike. Iranian naval forces have demonstrated capability to deploy mines faster than American countermeasure assets can clear them, creating a sustainable advantage that requires minimal continued effort to maintain. Global energy insurance markets have repriced strait transit risk upward by 600 to 700%, generating compound cost increases that are already visible in consumer fuel and electricity prices across Europe and North America. American mine warfare capabilities developed at multi-billion-dollar cost over 15 years have proven inadequate to restore freedom of navigation within acceptable operational timelines. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. When the next carrier group faces the same operational paralysis in a different contested waterway, when insurance markets price in the systemic vulnerability of American naval power projection, when energy costs reflect the permanent risk premium of relying on sea lanes that adversaries can close with 1970s technology, the analysis will be here documenting the gap between procurement promises and operational reality. Leave one question in the comments before you go. Can current mine countermeasure systems keep pace with what is being demonstrated in contested littoral environments, or are we watching the architecture of naval power projection being tested in ways it was not designed to survive? Every response gets read and considered. This is the analysis that official briefings will not provide.